Well, Chad, good to be here.
Are we doing it? Is it happening?
It's been rolling
The whole time?
the whole time.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Will that make it in?
No.
Good, because it didn't shine well on either of us.
It was steamy. It was hot. Yeah. Well, good to see you.
Yeah, nice. We have never really sat down and had a conversation like this. We've seen each other a bunch let's say, over the past 6 months. But
6 months, and then maybe occasionally over the few years.
Over at, I would see you at Nightcap.
Yeah.
I'd be coming in when you were setting up to...
Were you doing a clown show there?
No. How do you say Maliner? Aaron Maliner?
Maliner, yeah.
I always want to say Milner.
I think it's
I've known him for 15 years, which is...
15 years?
I've known him since he was just doing improv before stand-up.
I didn't know he was that old.
But he's a friend and also a very traditional stand-up guy. So once in a while, he'll book me at Nightcap.
Yeah.
And I know it pains him. I know he understands what I'm doing has value, but also I think he has like a level of revulsion watching me work. But that's to his credit as a good guy that he's like, I'll put you in to the mix. So I would go over there once in a while. I've actually gotten much better at playing within, I think, the rule set of stand-up when I do clown at stand-up shows.
Yeah.
So he was putting me up when I was really trying all kinds of crazy stuff. And some
Like
would
in a
work.
lineup.
Yeah, just in a traditional lineup.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it would work, but there were definitely nights that it didn't. And the thing is, like, when you do work like I do, you do want to be always on the edge of breaking it. How do I say this? You want to break it to the point where it can't be fixed, but you never want to be unable to save yourself, but it has to feel like you're going to destroy it. And so there was a time when I was first starting stand-up clubs as a clown that I would just have to accept that some nights I would just bomb so badly, but in a way that I'd almost ruin the night for everyone else, you know, but you have to learn somehow.
Do you, is that, because can I share like the speech you give to the artists before?
Oh, sure.
So when you were, because I overheard you at the Elysian saying like, hey, like it's going to feel like some version of like, I'm mad at you essentially, but I'm not. But if you push back on me too hard, then I lose the audience and the whole thing kind of falls apart.
This is for my show, Stand Up and Clown.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this show, I'm doing air quotes. Well, I guess for the video that'll show. I'm doing air quotes.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. I play this ruthless director, but it is me.
Yeah.
And I am definitely speaking truthfully. I'm just being mean-spirited about it. Like, I'm not making anything up.
Yeah.
I'm not treating failures like successes and successes like failures. But there's this agreement and opposition that I'm there to be the bad guy. And to do that, I have to be the bad guy. I can't performatively be the bad guy. I have to make the audience cringe a little bit. I have to make them empathize with the performers. And because of that, it has to feel real. And it is real. But theater isn't real. And entertainment isn't real. So that's the paradox of what I'm doing. I'm there solely to get them laughs and love and adoration from the audience. To do that, sometimes I have to reduce them to rubble in front of I have to.
And you have.
And there are times where if they don't find the way to success, they just fail.
Yeah.
They just get roasted, and it's just a win for the clown boss. You know, the audience laughs and they move on, but the audience doesn't think, oh, they overcame these obstacles. They're just like, these guys just bombed. I think they love them for bombing, but that is a possibility when you go on this show, that you're just going to come in and you're not going to be the hero. But if that didn't exist, it's what we were just talking about, if that possibility didn't exist, then the heroes would be meaningless.
Right. Do you think, could you give a little bit of a backstory for those who don't know what stand-up and clown is?
Sure. I'll tell you, do you want to hear the origin story?
Let's do it. It's like Avengers.
I had been in a couple troupes where I was live directed. One with John Gilkey from the Idiot Workshop, and another with Phil Berger's Dr. Brown. And I would watch them, and I thought it was such a fun idea to have this authority that could push back a little bit and also keep the audience safe. That's really what the authority does. The authority is there so the people performing can get into trouble, and they get scolded for it, and the audience is like, we're safe. But at the same time, the audience wants to root for the performers because they're the underdogs. And so I was in these two troupes, and both of these guys have very different styles. But as I was getting directed, I started thinking about my past as a pro wrestler I wasn't a pro wrestler. I was a pro wrestling announcer. My past in pro wrestling. Yeah, I don't want, boy, please.
Yeah.
I never,
Yeah.
I was thrown into some guardrails. I never threw a punch in my life.
Pro wrestling like WWE?
I was in WCW, their arch rival, for 5 years. Yeah.
Really?
I never put together that my clown journey and my wrestling journey were connected. I never saw how both of them played to the audience and their emotions. And it was only when I really got deep into clown and started getting live directed that I was like, wait a minute, these are the same. And then I was in a group called Jetso, and I also realized, wait a minute, I'm the heel in this group.
Yeah.
And Juzo Yoshida, who is my partner, he's the babyface, and we're having a match. Our shows are matches. And so I was really going through this revelatory phase.
That's why you have the hood.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like I'm just really playing into it deeply. And I know a lot of people who come recognize it, but most don't. Most don't see it.
I didn't put it together because I didn't really watch wrestling. But
right,
I know
if you
like
weren't
enough.
a fan.
Yeah, yeah.
But the whole construction of the show is basically set up the bad guy, me, as very powerful and hard to topple, which is what wrestling does. You know, the heel, the villain, he's very hard to beat, whether it's because he's cheating or because he's so big and so strong. So I started teaching at that point too. So all these things are being introduced into my life that are new. And as I'm teaching, my natural personality is I'm a ball buster. And when I was teaching, I would tease the students just to make them relax, because if you get teased, then the failures feel like
Tease is love.
teasing is love.
Yeah.
In my family especially.
Yeah. Italian?
Italian, 100%. And as I was doing that, I'm like, oh, I should do an open workshop because these classes are so fun. So I had Chad live directs a workshop at the Lyric Hyperion. And the idea was I just wanted to get students for my classes. So I would bring in like a bunch of clowns I liked and some new performers, and people would come, not a ton. And I would just do this shtick where I bring people up and show them exercises. And it wasn't the spectacle it is now. And what I found out was I couldn't be mean enough for the audience. Like I would tease and tease, and I always think I would go too far. And then those were the shows that got the best reaction. And so that's kind of how it started to build, this idea of like, oh, this is a show where people face me. This isn't a show where I'm illustrating the work. The only reason I use clown now in the title, stand up and clown, is because I feel like that's just a heated word. I think people are curious. They think it's mysterious. So when the Elysian opened and I started teaching there, I had this idea of like, I need to find a way to sauce this up. And I was like, who loves control more than anyone? Who wants an entire audience under their thumb the whole show? Stand-ups.
Stand-ups.
Perfect. Also, who are the biggest tryhards in town? Stand-ups.
Really? Biggest tryhards?
The good ones. You know, sure, you can go to an open mic and see a bunch of people who are like, oh, I don't give a shit. But like someone like yourself, you don't pour over your jokes. You don't think about jokes.
Oh, in that sense.
You want your jokes to succeed. You're not
like
going up
they
there.
put in effort.
They put in effort, and when they're out there, they feel it. Like if an audience they don't win an audience completely, they care in a way that clowns don't, and in a way that improvisers don't. Improvisers, you know, it's all high fives after the show. It could be the worst show. I'm not saying they might not feel bad, but a stand-up will definitely be like, what can I do next time to be better? And so I pitched the show, and I didn't really have any context, but I had a little heat because I'd been doing Clown Zoo all through the pandemic, and I'd met a bunch of people, and I'd been around for a long time, and I felt like I could make it work. And so I came up with this idea that stand-ups would come, 8 stand-ups would face me, and I would make them essentially do a silent clown show. And I would live direct them through the clown show. And I had a live musician. At the time, it was James Venable. Now it's Jack Boger. And so we would create these really dumb spectacles. But all throughout, I am roasting these comics.
Yeah.
And I'm saying a lot of things just to provoke the audience. And it's just kind of become this monster that just kept growing. And now it's unfortunately almost 95 minutes every time. Thank you, Elysian, for being forgiving. 95-minute show that has some of the dumbest moments that you'll see anywhere in town. It's just people who are used to, I won't say being smart, but being clever, being forced out of their comfort zone. They can't speak. They have to play. But the thing I'm most proud of about that show is how many stand-ups figure out the algorithm. And then by the second half, they understand how to win without speaking, like how to beat me through just pure stupidity and play. And those are my favorite moments, when they actually do win the audience over and I cede control of the show.
Are they going for laughs? Is that through that?
It depends. It depends. So a lot of times people win the audience over through their sheer will to please the audience. And the audience just like, no matter what you do, I'm going to cheer you because you want it so bad and you're trying so hard and this guy's being such a prick. But then there'll be someone like James Adomian or Robbie Hoffman or Eddie Pepitone who just figure out that I'm a toothless authority because I really can't do anything.
Right.
And so then they just start in a very benevolent way misbehaving. Like they don't say, shut up, or like, you're not powerful. For instance, James Adomian's like a master at it because he's just having so much fun.
Yeah.
That the audience wants to go with him anywhere. And if the audience is laughing, I can't do anything about it. That's the contract I have with the audience. If they love it, it stays.
Yeah.
And so he'll just start going on all these weird tangents. He won't be listening, but he's holding their interest. And so I have to let him do it. Whereas Eddie, who's been on the show a couple times, Eddie always tries a different tactic. Like one time he would just keep getting up and going, I want to be truthful. And he just started admitting things from his life. Like he's like, I have erectile dysfunction. And the audience would cheer. And I'd be like, that's not what we're doing. But
he's speaking now. But he's breaking it.
He's breaking it, but he's doing it in this way where he's like, isn't this about us revealing ourselves? And I just want to tell the audience this. And then the audience cheers. So technically he's breaking the rules, but he's following the assignment. I can't, and I would never say shut up, or because if the audience likes it, my job is to make sure they're getting as much of what they like as possible. That's the whole promise of the show. So it's a math problem for these stand-ups. And sometimes the solution is like absolute buffoonery, but sometimes you get a smart, clever stand-up who comes in and just goes, oh, wait a minute, I can walk around these rules and do this other thing. And those are just very exciting moments, that problem solving.
Yeah. Is it something you prep for?
It's the thing I prep for the most of any show I do every month. One, it's very important to me that these roasts are ruthless. So every duo goes up and then I roast them individually. But I wanted it to be nothing about gender, race, body shaming. So all these things that are normal, like if you go to like a Comedy Store roast,
right,
where it's like, you're a black guy, so every joke is going to be, or you're a gay guy, every joke is going to be about you being gay. I was like, I think that's sort of the old model for me. It's like, how do we roast people as people, who they are? Are they tryhards like we talked about?
Yeah.
Do they have all bad ideas? Are they selfish? Do they function smartly in one part of their life, but in everything else they're a fool? Like these are the universal things that cross culture lines. And so writing those roasts is really difficult because I'll even admit when I'm looking at the clowns, I'm looking at clowns right now for one that's going to be on March 25th. Your brain does go immediately
right to the classics,
all low-hanging fruit, the classics.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how do I destroy them in this roast while also saying we're all human, we're just human beings here. And we're all just being seen for who we are deep down beneath all that other stuff that differentiates us.
Yeah.
So I write those and then I create games for them to play. And I do bring back games that work, but I'm committed to bringing new games in every time. And what I mean by that is I present them with an unsolvable problem. And I dress it up in some way. Maybe I make it sound like a profound idea they're going to explore. Or maybe it's just an abstract play on words that I want them to create. But they actually take time because I kind of want to know how I'm going to play against what they're doing. So all of that work, I'm in it right now, actually. Like when I leave here, I'll be working on Monday.
How do you know, like, so you're writing the roast jokes, essentially. Mm-hmm. Are you testing them with an audience or are you just kind of like... You're bouncing them
I
off
test
anybody?
them with my girlfriend because she has just an okay sense of humor.
Okay. Perfect. Tough crowd.
You know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
right? You want someone there who's like not someone who even watches stand-up or comedy. And if they laugh, you're like, that's good.
Yeah.
And then I have my roommate, John, is very funny.
Okay.
And he definitely has suggestions. So yeah, I test a bunch, but I've just gotten to the point too where the tension is so high in that room, Latif, that I think actually if you pulled a lot of the roasts out of context, people would be like, that's okay.
Yeah.
But if you play the fact that people are so terrified for the stand-ups on stage, then just some well-placed pauses they're just dying for you to finish the roast.
Yeah.
And they're just going to laugh just because they're like, oh, thank God. So I test them to a degree, but it's like 20 minutes of jokes I learn because I try not to look at my notebook. And I also try to find different ways to
I think
roast.
the notebook you have is funny though.
Oh, it's fun. And it's fun.
It's like a Bible.
Yeah, it's fun to look at it but like then when I'm like, I really want to be looking at them. Like I never want to,
Yeah.
you know, when you see roast battles and they're just looking at their phones.
I've never seen that.
There's clips on like TikTok and it's just two people sitting there and they've just written down roast and they'll just be like, Latif is this. And then I'm like,
at least
no,
memorize it.
Memorize it.
Yeah.
And so
that's a huge advantage if you come into the roast and you're memorized and they're not.
Oh yeah. Oh my, if you could deliver like that, looking at them, being like having that performative side, but there are just roast battles where that's just, they're almost in agreement. It seems like it's like, we're just going to read off our phones. But again, this is my problem with stand up in general is.
What is your problem with stand up in general?
Like stand up loves to stack the deck in its favor. Stand up loves to create
low
situations.
Ceiling, tight crowd, like pack it in, big
pack
laughs.
it in, drinks, you know, like just even the way hecklers are dealt with, you know, it's very much, it's interesting because it's changed because now crowd work clips are so popular. But for, you know this, you've been doing this forever. For many years, the way you'd shut down a heckler, oh my God, like it would be like everyone in that audience would be like, I don't want to be that guy. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
You're like
now it's encouraged.
Now it's encouraged because there's a value and now they're playing more. But I just think stand up, they keep trying to optimize the model. They keep trying to give every advantage to the performer on stage. And what we know about everything in art and everything that's cool is that the best things come from inefficiency. Inefficiency creates the best art. Because if you find a way to sort of handle all and mitigate all your problems, then you also kind of end up just in riding the center. Like there's no fun on the exterior. There's no surprises. And stand-ups love that feeling. Stand-ups love to go on stage, most stand-ups, and just feel like, oh my God, I've got them in a chokehold. Mm-hmm. They're laughing exactly when I want. I'm telling my jokes. And for me, there's not a lot of courage in that. There's not a lot of courage in being like, let's take it to the edge. Let's see how it breaks. Let's see where it goes. But I get it too, because stand-up is been commodified to make money, and you're all much better at making money than we are. Way better. I'm not saying every stand-up makes money, but I'm saying you figured out how to make money, how to tour, you know, how to just exist. Whereas clowns, you know, we have anecdotes. We have stories of like Natalie Palomina's got on Netflix. You know?
Yeah.
Whereas stand-ups, it's just like, this is the road. You're going to get your social media to here.
Yeah.
Then you're going to feature for a while, and then maybe you'll get with someone really good, and then you'll start. You know, like you figured out how to make a living at it. Most don't. But at least you have a path. And in that path, now stand-up becomes capitalism. It's business. And business isn't fun.
Do you think that that's, like, how is that different from, like, because you need a certain ideal situation for your show to work?
We do, but there's a lot more room for things to go any which way. And for the show to be completely different. And also, there's just a commitment to... this room will provide a different version of our show. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist in stand-up. I'm saying when we do it, by the way, there's a lot of terrible clowns. Let's just talk about that. Hey, we both love the Elysian. There are nights you can walk in and you can see one of the acts in a variety show doing clown in a way that you're like, oh, this is why people hate clown. Do you know what I mean?
You think people hate it?
I think a lot of people are scared of it or have seen an act where they felt unsafe. And I don't mean in a way like that they were going to get slapped, but they just felt a level of discomfort that wasn't joy. Yeah. Because this is one of the things I rail. So I have a podcast where I talk about clown. And one of the things I rail on a bunch is audience interaction it's still about bringing joy to the audience, but there'll be an act I see once in a while where clowns are like, 5 people get on stage. Now we're all in the army together. And like these audience members are like, I don't want to do this. I don't know.
Some do. It's LA.
Yeah, some do. By the way, if they want to be in it, it won't work. That's also like, if they really want to be on stage with you, it'll be terrible. Yeah. Because then they're just like, this is my moment. Yeah. What you want is that audience member that is kind of excited by the prospect of being on stage, but in the end would have gladly just watched the show. They would have gladly never been there. It's funny in LA specifically, you have to become a master of reading rooms more so than other places.
Yeah.
Because you're right. There's just a bunch of savages out there.
Luke Null, who you had on your show recently, like he was doing a show that I was hosting, and I went up after him, and because he had asked the whole audience to sing. I was like, Luke, what you don't understand is these people were not terrified. They were like, finally.
Yeah. Like something. Like
no, they were like, finally I can sing. Finally it's my turn.
Right. It's my moment. And by the way, Luke is a great example because it's nice. You're singing from the darkness.
Yeah.
Whereas with clown, they see people like Courtney Peroso, they see people like Natalie Palamides, Bill O'Neill, and they're very good at playing with an audience and protecting an audience, like bringing them on stage and making them look good. And they're like, oh, the thing here is that the X factor of my show is that someone from the audience will be a part of it. But then they don't think, well, how can I make sure that this audience member in failure or success is a winner by the end of the show? It's just like, I'll bring someone. I saw someone at your theater a year and a half ago, and they were just in the workshopping stage, but they brought up someone and they sat them down and they were just going to have lunch with them. I'm like, okay. And then they were just like, so tell me about your day. And they just kept asking them questions.
On stage?
On stage. And it was like, no, you have to present them with a game to play.
Yeah.
And then you're watching how they play back. But you are always making offers and then always supporting whatever they do. And I think at one point in the show, he actually...
Is it yes ending?
Well, he was just kind of like, I think the joke was it was supposed to be a boring lunch or something like that. And he left for a while and just left them on stage. Like I thought he thought it was funny that he was subverting the idea. But like from an audience's perspective, they're like, that's one of us.
Yeah.
Like you just brought up and embarrassed one of us.
So they turned?
Well, they just, this was a younger audience. They just kind of like didn't care. Like they shut off. I wouldn't say like they started boo. We're getting, as much as I like to shit on stand-up, we're also getting our share of audiences who really want to be in on the joke. Mm-hmm. So we are at a stage that I don't particularly love because I like an audience to hold us accountable. That's my stand-up and clown.
Yeah.
I beg them. I'm like, please hold us accountable. Please don't feel like you ever have to laugh or cheer or clap. And then when they disobey me and do it, I do feel like they're doing it out of agency.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're like, fuck you. We're going to do it because we want to have a good time. But you can definitely go to a show and the people are like, this is cool and weird, right? And they're like, I don't think I like this, but
right. But that's going to die because like you're doing enough in your shows where it is still a show. Like it is still shows that you're putting on. Like you have your entrance, you have the music, you have that tension where you tell them not to laugh. Like there's a design here. And if you didn't put the effort in, it would show and you wouldn't have the audience in my opinion.
Thank you. I do take a lot of pride in creating the world. I've been doing these shows with Rory Scovel.
So good.
So we had one last night, and probably it's my favorite one of the run.
Oh, it's the one I missed. I was up with you guys until yesterday. Because I'll tell a short story about the one the week before where...
You got called out. You got called out in that one.
I got called out. But
I saw you back there. I was like, I'm so mentioning you.
I didn't know if you saw me, but you did like part of the show in the lineup of like there was a cop car pulling up and you guys weren't allowed in the Elysian, but it was kind of part of the act, right? And I was like, this was brave because not only did the fake cop car come out with like a badge, he left his car in the middle of the street with like a siren playing out of it. And then it was challenging because you don't realize how much road noise is on the riverside. I was like, oh, that's a lot.
And about a 400-foot line too. So all this road noise, we don't have mics or megaphones or anything like that.
Yeah, megaphones. Megaphones would have been fun.
It would have been so funny.
Oh, we should have megaphones on deck.
Megaphones, by the way, in general, make me laugh so hard because it also like distorts the voice and the voice becomes almost aggressive, but in a way that makes me laugh. I was like, that's so... I have a act I do. I have this show I've been running called Catsby for years at just the Clubhouse. It's a little grinder show where like young clowns can get up. And one of the acts is someone gives notes from side stage via megaphone in the little theater. Yeah. And so all the notes just kind of like boom out of this thing in a way that makes them seem less credible, but then the notes are good.
And the button's funny.
Yeah, the button's funny. But you were gonna tell the story from
Anyway, yeah, the show was so great. And then you go to the clown, or not the clown room. It should be called the clown room, maybe the skunk room.
Yeah.
And then the show takes place there. It's like a revolution. You had actors, and they were kind of like militia, Black Panther type vibe, and it was so great. I loved it. And then the projector presentation, and
and John Daly was there. And
yeah, you lost a couple people. There was like a few people were like, all right.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. You need a couple walkouts.
Yeah.
When I do my class shows at the Skunk Room for the Elysian, I know they're a little too long, but I think part of the fun of it is the endurance of like, can we get to this thing that seems impossible? And I always walk like maybe 4 or 5 people.
Yeah.
And they're always over 50, and I'm over 50.
Yeah, they're older, but it's also hard to stand in the skunk for a long time.
Yeah, so but it kind of becomes fun. I think there is like almost a punk rock badge of courage where you're like, we lost a couple, finally.
Yeah.
We skimmed the pond.
Yeah, exactly. But it's been this ongoing thing with you and Rory of like how to save comedy, essentially. Yeah. And they've been like they've gotten me more excited about comedy because they're so different. Like it's become the best show that like I think is happening right now.
I'm so excited about it. Last night we did a full theatrical play. We had Ricky Lindholm show up and play one of the parts. Jensen Titus came and did this big...
How did you get a play together that quickly?
We're using a lot of clown trickery. A lot of it I learned during the Clown Zoo days because we were essentially putting on plays, like we're putting on these huge plays all through the Clown Zoo after dark. And I couldn't wrangle those clowns for a rehearsal. They're all doing well in various ways.
Because they're clowns.
They're clowns also. And so I would just create like a structured format. And like if you know when the entrances are happening and you know some basic points you're building to, you could leave a lot of space for just improvised discovery. And so we just found the rhythm of a play and very presentational. People would take one of the notes we gave backstage was like, if anyone's talking and you're not in like an argument with them, go completely like classic theater stuff. And so then it felt like all these moments were being created. And the best part though, for me, we had also like 2 magicians performing at once.
Yeah, Josh Edelman.
Yeah, we just made, and then Derek Scully, who we also recruited. So he's a tech there. We recruited him to be Timothy Elysian, the owner of the Elysian.
He's just Scully. You can't say his first name.
I guess when I said it, it felt weird.
Yeah.
He was playing this part and doing tech. And at one point he had to run up and pull down the projector screen. And he was just so amped up because he was trying to do all this stuff. He just yanked it off the wall. Like it was the funniest thing you ever saw. It just plummeted. And then he had to wrap it up. And so then one of the magicians, their whole act was that screen. And so now these 2 magicians who are supposed to be, who don't work together, we're just forcing them because they're friends. So there was all that kind of great stuff. But the best part was while they were on, we were able to talk. And I was just like, let's just play a clown game in the second half. I said, I know we have plans, and it's a classic clown drill, which is try not to stand out. Because whenever we try not to stand out, we look like the Unabomber. You know,
like be still, not stand out, or?
Like just blend in. Just like the note is like, because the idea was Ricky was the star of the play, and so Ricky's going to be up front doing like some silent object work, and then Rory and our job was to be extras and not to stand out. And so, of course, now the audience, anything we do that gets attention, they laugh.
Yeah.
And it just built to such, like I had all of Rory's clothes in my pants and he was down to his underwear with Ricky's guitar. And he was like, because we're just like, we finally get to the point where no one's looking at Ricky. Like that's the whole point. But like just being able to do a game like that I would do in class for an audience and have them really respond to it. And also be able to call that audible in the show. That's the kind of work I'm most excited about. That's what we were talking about earlier, ceding that control of what the end product is supposed to be. And as artists, being able in the present space, in the moment, be like, this show is something else. They're telling us, how do we go in that direction? And yeah, we got a 3-minute standing ovation.
Wow.
Which we had been begging for the whole show. But it's still on camera.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also like you don't know how many people are going to continue week to week with this ride. And how do you keep topping yourself?
Well, already we're talking about, we have 2 shows in April and we're like, this show is so good. Afterwards, we're like, what are we going to do? And we have a plan. We set up an idea at the end of the show for what the next show will be. but we're going to take a week off and just be like, let's just make sure we're not getting ahead. We're not writing our way through this. We're experiencing our way through this. Like,
oh, nice.
And that's been, I got to tell you, the Elysian has been such a great home for me. Probably the first place I've ever felt was truly a home to me and like supportive of me.
Your home club.
Yeah. But one of the best things that come of it was meeting Rory.
Oh, is that how you met?
We met because when I was first starting stand-up and clown, I was just asking anyone at the Elysian, who do you know? How can I get, because I needed names. I needed names to get people to come. And Rory was just starting to do the whatever show. And so I had never met him before. And I was like, can you guys like vouch for me? And so he came and did it. And you could see like when he got there, he goes, I don't understand what this is. I had met him twice before. I was with Natalie doing different things, Natalie Palamides, and he was just stoned out of his gourd before going out and improvising stand-up. So I don't think he even remembered me. And he came on, and when he did my show, you could see it clicked. And he failed, by the way. He did 2 shows. One, he did great. The first show, he bombed.
Who's he with?
First show, he was with Ever Maynard.
Okay.
And then the second show, he was with Mike O'Brien. And he and Mike O'Brien did really well. When I say they bombed, they were hilarious, but Ever and Rory just couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
And you could see that excited. He was like, oh my God, I just went on stage and I got a bunch of laughs bombing. So he invited me to do the first whatever show because he had this sketch he wanted to do at the top where he wanted to pretend that he'd been kidnapped from his own show. And he goes, would you be the guy who kidnapped me? And we just had such a immediate shorthand. I don't know if you've had that like creatively.
Yeah,
you just
totally.
meet someone, you're like.
You can tell on stage you guys are like almost like symbiotic.
It's like we have completely opposite ways of seeing things, but towards the same end goal.
Yeah.
Because I'm so physical and, I'm just kind of playing audience and he's so cerebral and free and like stream of conscious. And so we had like kind of had a couple rough conversations. We're like, well, yeah, we'll do like 5 minutes. You'll pretend that you're running the show. I'll come in like handcuffed, covered in blood. And I was like, I'll do your makeup. He's like, great. And this 5-minute thing went for like almost 30 minutes because we were just in the zone.
Yeah.
And then from that point on, we just started working together. I would do a bunch of the whatever shows and do characters, but it ultimately culminated in this show, which we had been talking about for over a year. And it has been like putting so much effort. Do you remember that when like you were in high school or college and you just pour a ton of
everything is in this. Yeah.
Everything is in this. And what I have been doing a lot, like I'd been doing that with stand-up and clown on my own.
Right.
But other things I'd been doing, I'm always trying to find ways to deal with artists that I have limited time with.
Yeah.
Like how can I make the show the best show possible, knowing that a lot of it will have to be by the seat of our pants because we're not going to, it's day of stuff. We're not going to meet 5 times. And so for this, we do meet and we write together and work on stuff together. And those Mondays were like all day, like getting we had real playbills last night. By the way, we are breaking even on these. Like these shows are selling out, and we are breaking even. And the show you saw did not break even. The dildos alone in that show, I was like, we're in the red on dildos.
$300.
Yeah, they're expensive.
Yeah.
So it has just been really fun, and to his credit too, this is like a legitimately successful TV person who has the same level of enthusiasm for like creating this dumb thing for a finite amount of people. So that's just been a pleasure. And it's just like, oh, if I'm ever that successful, which maybe not, I'm like, I hope I remember what he's doing now.
Yeah. It's refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the bond you have, like, it feels like you guys are both focused on being present. Like, in a way, like 2 of the most present performers I've seen like on stage who are just like, nice. You're there and what's happening, you're reacting to, which is a little bit different for stand-up. Like stand-up kind of goes a little bit present, but it's also like, I have my notes, I have my act that you can go right back to.
I have this.
But your guardrails are like, if a stand-up's guardrails are here and here, yours are like there.
Well, also just the idea that the whole room is telling us things. And we do come in less prepared. That's one of the reasons I like working with stand-ups is because I like that the good ones really work at it. I mean, I shouldn't say all the good ones because we all know stand-ups who just have the gift and they're probably better off just going on stage and finding it. Like, so that certainly exists.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at people who make specials and people who eventually build other products for themselves and TV shows. There's a work ethic.
Totally.
There's a commitment. And I love that. And with clowns, that's not always the case. What we're seeing a lot too right now is that Edinburgh Fringe and these sort of overseas festivals have become really popular. So one-person shows have become popular.
Yeah.
And boy, if you wanted a metric for people who have work ethic and people who like just have the spirit of a clown, watch the different processes people go through building shows. Like watch Natalie Palamides build a show. Literally come in with what is clearly 50, 60 hours of work to try ideas, like just her whole life fully committed. And then someone else will be like, I'm here. What do we like? Oh, I brought a couple props. They're like Carrot Top up there. You know, they're like, is this something?
Right. It's 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's 30 minutes. It's sort of like pleadingly asking the audience, is this something? As opposed to, look at this. I'm presenting you with a show.
Yeah.
And I'm going to see how you react to it at maximize value, even of terrible ideas. So I'm going to do some stuff that's not going to work 100%.
Yeah.
So many of these artists also are very much like, oh, there's a festival. I guess I'll just do this idea. Like there's not that sense of, I've been thinking about this idea for 3 years or I've been doing shows working on a character. And I just know it's more like an assignment in school.
Yeah. It's like, I have this opportunity. What can I fit in that?
What can I fit in? And I know that because I don't know if you know this about me. 15 years of my life in Los Angeles, I was a working screenwriter. WGA working screenwriter.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I was on the blacklist in 2007.
Hey.
Back when it meant something, folks.
Yeah, before
back when it wasn't a website.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was when it was legitimately Roy Lee and cohorts choosing scripts they thought were really good.
Yeah.
And for years, I worked with every studio. I did dozens of open writing assignments. I had 5 network development deals for pilots.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. And very much I understand that sensibility of like, well, this is my art and like what just let me I'll just do anything. What's next? I don't care. You know, it didn't start like that. I started very much with my writing partner being like, what's cool?
Right.
What's interesting? And then you get about 5-6 years in, nothing's been produced.
What was the one? Was it a 22-minute thing, an hour thing for Blacklist? Was it a full screenplay?
Full screenplay. It was called Kamikaze Love.
Okay. Did it ever get developed?
It was purchased by Sony Screen Gems.
Okay.
So it was called Kamikaze Love. It was written to be in northern New York, like upstate. And essentially...
Like the Bronx?
Way upstate. Yeah. Low upstate, the Bronx. The idea was like Buffalo or something, Olean. And essentially like this Japanese Yakuza thing happens where there's a wedding happening up there in isolation. And
because there's lots of Japanese up there.
You know, yeah, that was kind of the joke. By the way, I don't work with my writing partner anymore from back then, but we're still really good friends. But sometimes we're like, I hope they never make that thing. It's like, I think it's pretty problematic. Script. We didn't know. We'd just seen Kung Fu Hustle. We were excited. We didn't know we were 2 white guys.
Right. It was 2023. Yeah. Like who would have known things would change?
We would be like, guys, we wrote this in 2006. 2006. See how nervous I get even thinking about it. So anyway, right off the bat, he just came to this conclusion. He goes, the only way the script gets made if it's made in Japan. We're like, what? It's made in Japan and the white guy comes over there. And we're like, that doesn't make any sense. And it kind of set the script on this crazy journey where it kept getting moved to different international subsidiaries of Sony. And we were in the same pool as Election and Slumdog Millionaire. Like we were right there in that group. Everyone around us got made. And then that script never did. But it opened every door you could imagine.
Right.
Because at the time, like I said, that list really meant something.
Yeah, it was like a groundbreaking entry.
Yeah. Also, it was kind of this cool thing of like, these are unproduced. Like these are scripts that should be produced. Maybe they're too cool, too visionary. And we got all these great meetings and we worked on all these great projects. And like you said, you just get to a point where you're like, I want a house.
Yeah.
I'm doing all this work or like, when's this going to end? Because we keep writing scripts that don't get made. You don't understand the miracle it is to get a script made. And so then you have agents and managers who also, they want to get paid too. And they're getting paid modestly for your development, but they're not getting that big check.
Right. They want it made.
They want it.
Yeah.
And so then they're like,
because that gets you the next project and the next project.
and then, when those projects get made, now they're getting a chunk of that. They're getting a chunk of the real money, because it's always, you get your development money and it's like, but if it gets made, it's a way bigger number. And so they push you. And I don't think they do it maliciously. It's just like, that's their business model. That's how they buy their houses and get their cars.
Yeah, it's a business.
But let's like do this family movie, do this toy. And like, we fought it for a long time. I can remember getting offered one of the Marmaduke sequels, and we were like, we wouldn't be caught dead. And years later, we joked, we're like, we would kill you writing Marmaduke right now.
Yeah.
Compared to this garbage, like Marmaduke's at least a likable character.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a big dog. We're dog people. And I'll tell you really quickly. I don't want to belabor the story, but we had one of these epic falls from grace where the last real project that we worked on, we had agreed to develop Fruit Ninja, the cell phone app, into.
Oh, hell yeah.
So, and no one forced us. We were just at this point where we were like hammers looking for nails. We're like, what can get made? And we got pitched this thing. We left the meeting laughing, like, you got to be kidding. This is a finger swiping fruit.
They made the Emoji Movie. So like
this all ties together.
Yeah. So
I actually was the one who came up with a take, and I called my writing partner like at midnight and go, I guess this would be fun. And we're like, okay. So we wrote up this take. No one would meet with us because they were like, even Hollywood, which has no moral barometer, was like, this is too stupid. But then we ended up getting 2 meetings. And at that time, I was really deep into my clown improv, like my performance journey. So I was like, it's such a long shot. Like, let's make a show of it. Like, you stay on book and I'll do a bunch of characters. Like, let's go for it in a way we've never gone for it.
In a meeting.
Yeah. Like, I'm going to be standing the whole meeting doing like scenes and stuff like that.
In ninja garb.
I wish that. By the way, I was doing an act with a Japanese guy at the time. I had it. I had that kind of clothes.
Yeah.
So
for the stage version of Kamikaze Love.
Right.
Let's develop it.
Let's go. I'm back. No,
that's a fun story if you actually brought it back to the stage.
Oh my god, could you imagine?
And then it gets developed, and then you finally sell it.
Oh my god, that's a book right there. Then I die during the screening, knowing I made this huge mistake.
As the credits roll.
Beep.
Yeah.
So after those 2 meetings, we crushed in these meetings. They had never seen anything like it, and like. Look, I'm not patting myself on the back. I am a good performer. And I was so present and I was playing and riffing. From those 2 meetings, that word got out and we got 30 more meetings from those 2. But it became clear.
You're not going to want to buy this, but just for the performance alone, take the meeting.
Latif, 100%. And so in the middle of it, we realized we're like this carnival sideshow.
Yeah.
Like no one's buying, like everyone's like,
you're the best part of their day now.
Yeah. They're like, that was amazing. Thank you. Like, no, like, oh, this is something we should discuss.
Yeah.
But we're like, we'll keep going. And we had good timing. New Line had just kind of changed ownership, like not ownership, changed leadership.
Yeah.
And New Line buys it. So now we start to write it. And we're like, oh my God, we did it. We sold an impossible thing. At the time, the Emoji Movie was coming out. And New York Times Magazine reached out to our producer and was like, we want to do a story about you guys developing Fruit Ninja to be released on the weekend that the Emoji Movie comes out. This idea of like IPs that don't feel like they should be movies being made.
Right.
We kind of debated like, should we do this? Because it's going to be a hatchet job.
Right.
But all press is good press. And I will say, I feel this reporter did the best job he could. But this front page story in New York Times Magazine comes
Above
out.
the fold?
Oh yeah, no. This is the magazine. This is
the magazine,
but it's the front page. It's like a picture. Like so, we're the front page story of the magazine.
You and Fruit Ninja.
Me, Fruit Ninja. I remember the producer's name, but it was about all of us making this movie. So, Emojis opens to critical dismay. It's making money, but this is like the breaking point. The movie's not very good. It's making money. All these think pieces come out, and this is the best part. I love this story. Jordan Peele, I think, did an interview with Vanity Fair. It might have been somewhere else where they were talking to him about why did he stop acting? Why was he only doing directing? And Jordan Peele says the last straw was he was offered the role of Poop Emoji in the Emoji Movie. And he goes, I'm done acting.
I thought it was going to be, I got offered the role of Ninja in Fruit Ninja.
But this was
finger.
This was a thing of like perfect timing, right? So then it's like, and then our story comes out and now people are like, you thought Emojis was bad. At least they had emotions. They were faces. And so the movie goes into turnaround. A New Line was also having a tough summer. like just in comedies in general. I think
Yeah.
Baywatch came out that summer and bombed. And we didn't know it, but we were dead in the water. Like we had no idea for months and months and months that we were dead in the water. We were just like, why aren't we getting meetings? Why can't we pitch our network shows?
Yeah, where's the fruit?
Where's like, hey, like, yeah, sure. We've had a bunch of projects fail.
Yeah, we've cast watermelon, we've cast orange. Where's apple?
Guys, yeah, let's turn. And, you know, in that producer, son of a bitch, he got us to write a rewrite on it, like a 2-month rewrite.
Oh, after it's already dead?
It's dead in the water. And we were just so desperate to be like, maybe it's just the script needs to be better. And it took me about another year to fully commit to not like that we lost all our momentum, but also that I didn't want to do this. And that's kind of where now
like writing for,
I didn't want to work on projects and write. I didn't want to be in that system. I didn't want to be
like a gun for hire.
Gun for hire. Also, I was just done writing the ideas of idiots. And we have this whole middle layer in Hollywood, all these creative execs, they are stone cold idiots. They've come from like an expensive college program. They've never created anything in their lives. They're desperate to get the attention of the people above who make decisions. They just waste endless time and resources on writers. They lie to you. They tell you this is a project of importance when their boss doesn't even know about it because they need the pitch to go to their boss. So
they got to package it up.
They package it up. So like you're constantly, they'll tell you they have the rights to an IP and they don't. And in general, their taste isn't good. I can't remember the name of the company, but they're the people who made The Watch, which was eventually Neighborhood Watch. But then they had to change the name of that movie because that guy in Florida shot a guy and he was in the Neighborhood Watch.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? So when we went to that company, I'll never forget, they said, we've got the best business model. All our movies start with the title. And we design a poster and then we hire writers to write the movie. I was like, what are you? And they were so proud. They're like, isn't that great?
I think that's been done.
Yeah. Like also like one, that's every B movie ever made. But also like, isn't this brilliant that like, so we sit here, a bunch of idiots, and we'll come up with a cool title. And then we hire a guy to make a cool poster. And then you spend 18 months of your life somehow trying to make sense of this disaster.
Did you see the BlackBerry movie? It's about the story of BlackBerry, it dying, basically. It's actually a really good movie.
Is it good? Yeah.
It's a great movie. But what about the movie about the movie of Fruit Ninja failing?
Oh boy, don't pull me back into this world, Latif. I just think in general,
because that's fun. Like filming the scenes of you taking the meetings around town.
Yeah,
and that is great.
If I was going to write a movie about a disastrous point in my life in terms of the arts, it would be a same writing partner. We spent several years while we were learning to write together. Yeah. And we spent several years just writing the worst scripts ever. I can remember one script we wrote was, and by the way, it was funny because we'd bring the script up in meetings as like an example of how we'd grown. And almost every time an executive would be like, can we read that? Yeah. But essentially it was a fraternity, because we were young guys, we were like late 20s, early 30s. A fraternity starts drugging one of the pledges so he thinks he's dying, so they don't get kicked off campus. And it was called Terminally Phil instead of Terminally Ill, right? I know, I'm embarrassing. But this is like...
I think you could sell that.
Yeah, everyone's like, what?
That's sellable. So there's certain buzzwords you say, you're like, okay, frat. You're like, okay, I'm listening.
Frat, oh, go on. Okay. But when I saw that Ricky Stenicki movie, I'm like, this is kind of what this was. And we, what we would do is we would write in the room together, and then eventually we'd sit down and be like, we're going to do a state reading, and we're going to really read it all out loud and see how it sounds. And this movie was just like one of the first movies we wrote. It had a bunch of Make-A-Wish kids in it that were like a gang. And like it was all these absurd ideas, but then we kind of wanted to have heart. And there's like a scene at the end. So we're reading the script and it's straight hot garbage. Like it's trash. Like we know it. We're just looking at each other like, oh my God, we wrote that, like you and I worked. And we get to this scene where all the fraternity brothers are in like an ICU with a kid nicknamed Hawking, who was like about and Hawking like just grabs someone's finger and then I remember JP, my partner, reads, Hawking smiles, then dies. And we both looked at each other and then we started laughing, but not in a good way. Like, I mean, we were laughing so hard, but like we were devastated. Like we couldn't believe we did this, right? And it was like we made some major changes, but the point is, while that was happening, we were working jobs with reality TV companies. That's the best period of my life, like working on those early.
Because it needs minimal writing. right?
Well, it's all about generating bad ideas. You know, we worked on a show.
You're like, I can do this.
Well, we were like, we were getting paid like $1,500 a week, which right now I would still be very interested in. And it was, we got brought into this company called Nash Entertainment, which was just, they had done like remember those shows like Alien Autopsies and Police Chases Gone Wrong? That's what the kind of shows, but they were trying to move into like more like Joe Millionaire stuff, but like really trashy reality that kind of existed for a spell that you're like, because now like the trashy reality is like Love is Blind, but it's still really well made.
It's high budget. Yeah.
Smart people make that show, but it's like a bad idea.
Right.
And we got brought in because the National Entertainment had sold an idea to TBS, I believe. And it was essentially The Bachelor with twins. So the Bachelor didn't know he was dating sets of twins. So it was like Parent Trap. And the whole concept of the show was the twins keep switching on dates with the Bachelor. Like, it's just a bad idea. And we got brought in to work on 8 episodes of the show. And it was like the most surreal meetings. They had the first episode, I remember the Bachelor goes with all 8 sets of twins. Again, he thinks they're all one person, the twins.
Yeah.
And while he's eating with half the twins, the other half of the twins are all in geisha makeup, and they come out and they perform a tea dance. Like, this is in the outline of like, wouldn't it be great? He has no idea they're the same women because they're in geisha makeup doing the tea. Like, this kind of like, what? This makes no sense. And we would,
but even if he doesn't notice, then what?
Well, that's the whole thing. There was no payoff. And also, they were like, to what end is this? Yeah. Like, he's going to find out that he's been lied to. And they're like, no, it's cool. Because at the halfway point, we tell him they're twins. And then he starts to fuck with them. We're like, who is this? Who are we helping? Who's this for? Like, it was just, but we were desperate. Like, we weren't making any money. Our scripts were bad. And we got put on this other show called, what was it called? It was like the Clampetts and McCoys. It was basically 2 neighbors in a cul-de-sac would have a series of contests. So 2 families would compete in 2 contests. And then the losing family would have to leave the neighborhood. It was like Loser Leaves Town or something like that. But like a whole family would have to relocate their children into a new school system. And like, we worked on that show. We had like $200,000 budget per hour. Like, nothing. And I made
sounds high.
Now. Back then though, and I was like, I should have kept my mouth shut just because who gives a shit. But I was like, there's not enough money. Like, you're talking about these ideas where we take everyone to the Alps, and like, you told us that we had to stay in this budget. And he looked at me, and the whole room went cold, like I was going to get my head torn off. And he said this thing I'll never forget. He said, when you come into this room, you bring me a whorehouse. You let me worry if I end up with a hooker on the street. And I was just like, what? And then the meeting was over, and no one ever explained.
What's the analogy?
What are we saying? I don't understand. Like, I kind of, I guess, understand.
I don't.
Like, I guess he's saying, like, think big. Like,
but is that too old?
Yeah, like this whole idea of like, who's bringing who a whorehouse? Like, what business is this?
Yeah.
But that was a period of time. That was about 8 months of my life where every day I would we were at Gower Studios, and it's so old that what they would do is they would just bundle cords like for your phone and for your internet, and then just run them with duct tape on the floor. So you'd be tripping over them all the time. But like, so it was just like working in like this.
This is before it got redone.
Yes, this is before it got redone. And like the rugs were disgusting. And then, yeah, that we talk about that period, or like when I reminisce with my writing partner, because at least it was short. Like the Fruit Ninja thing, what makes it a better movie?
Well, because it's an identifiable. You got me like Fruit Ninja. I just like there's a curiosity
also,
around that.
Also, we were in.
Yeah.
Like at this point, we're like, oh my God, we're prisoners.
Yeah.
But we were 100% like, let's get this fucking movie made.
Yeah.
Let's get this fruit movie made. And I remember like, we would just be like, Josh Gad, Kevin Hart. Like we were pitching like who all the characters were. Like, and you're like, it's like someone would like, there was an evil fruit monster that was like it was just.
They made Beverly Hills Ninja. How bad could Fruit Ninja be if it's good?
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Now I got to reread the script now. No, I'm just kidding.
Pull it up. One thing I wanted to ask you about was like there's this buzz like you can start to feel like in the stand-up community about clown. And it's even like you're hearing it on like certain like New York podcasts they're talking about it, but they're so far from it that they don't know what it is. Do you think that's good for the art or bad, or is it getting too big? Like, do you feel that it's going to become disco where it's like, oh, that was cool for a few years, or can it have like a multi-year longevity?
It'll become disco. Here's what's going to happen, and this is just modern culture. Like the word just will lose a meaning.
But it already has.
Well, I mean, it's meaningless, hopefully in a good way right now. You know, like it's like it can be anything, but like it'll just be appropriated. It'll be taken by wealthier people, more powerful people who don't understand it. That's how the world will be introduced to it on a grand level.
I'd say Shaq, but okay.
Yeah, Shaq would be amazing. Shaq is a clown. I mean, I always worry about, you know, here's a perfect example. I have a fanny pack. I've had it for 30 years. I've always used it. I used to be in pro wrestling, like I mentioned. We had it back then. And I can remember a few years ago, people started wearing them. And I was like, here we go. Because before I was just someone on the outside. But now in a few years, I'll be someone holding on to a trend. This is what the perception will be.
Right.
It's like, this idiot's still wearing fanny packs. We stopped wearing those 2 years ago.
You're like, I've been wearing fanny packs.
Yeah. The whole time. Like I just.
For its actual utility.
Yeah.
Value.
I love utility. I do love utility. If you have a dog too, a fanny pack for.
Do you have a dog?
Yeah. For poop bags. I mean,
everything.
It's everything. I do feel some people will be elevated by it. I think some people will get chances to do, you know, Sarah Squirm being on, or Sarah Sherman being on SNL. Like we will see some success stories. Here's the thing. We're just going to change the name of it. We're just going to pivot. Like I'm not worried about me going away. I'm not worried about the work going away. It'll just, people will take it and get the wrong idea again. And I mean, this has happened to clown a million times though. You look back when clown became super popular in America, but what happened was around the mid-50s, Bozo the Clown, the morning TV show. And I think the first one was Wilford Brimley, who actually, from what I'm told, did a pretty good job. So you're taking this model of a clown, you put it on TV, and it's so popular in the market it starts in that they license it to all these other markets. There's not clowns there, no trained clowns. So it's like the weatherman in every market also.
But it's the different thing. They're just putting on a clown outfit.
Right. But then that's what I'm saying is that's what happens. Like, so you have a success that is genuine. And then all of a sudden they're like, how do we make money on this? Or how do we get some value out of it? And then before you know it, there's clowns in every local market, some horrific clowns, some Krusty the Clowns.
Are there clowns in every, like, is there the type of clowning that's happening here, like in LA and at the Elysian around the country?
No. So I would say there's a scene in New York that's fairly strong. It's a little more traditional than ours. Vegas, obviously, because they have actual work for clowns. So their independent scene isn't great because they actually work. So they're like, why would I do independent stuff? I can be on the Cirque show. I can be on the Spiegelworld show. Chicago has a tiny scene compared to LA. LA's the biggest, broadest. What we're doing here, it's not happening anywhere. London, you can find some of this stuff. There's definitely clowns down in Australia.
How does it grow and become sustainable without dying?
I don't know if it does.
Is that part of the clown? It has to not be big.
I'm doing some freelance for UCB right now. And the idea is I'm coming in and I'm applying clown principles to their formula in the hopes of showing artists how to break the formula.
Zip, zap, zop, university got you.
Yeah, they got me. But I'm doing it on my terms, Latif.
And the NDA.
So to their credit, they understand that they've created something that doesn't have an aftercare program. Like they've created something that's good for getting people into a writer's room or getting a Del Taco commercial or auditioning for a sitcom. But then
like UCB has.
UCB, yeah. And it does work to that degree. However, if you don't happen to fall into any of those categories or you don't have the right look or whatever, there's no like, well, now you're an artist. Go on and create something new. So like I've been brought in, and I think with clown, just the mere fact that for it to exist in its purest form, you have to have a bunch of outliers and rule breakers. There's no way to commodify it. There's no way to make a scene that is sustainable, that sort of makes money in any way like stand-up does. There can't be laugh factories for clown all over the country. It has to look different wherever it is because the audience and the people doing it are different and have different experiences. There's a really healthy underground scene, and I hope it stays that way. Do I want to make a bunch of money because I'm a great clown? Sure.
Can both things be true? Can you make money and also have a great scene?
I think a few of us can. I think in general, though, it's like punk rock. And I mean that in the most nihilistic way, because I think punk rock gets mentioned a lot of times and people are like, punk rock, that's what we want. I'm like, look at punk rock. It had its moment. It burned hot and bright. There were definitely a few bands that were iconic. And in general, very quickly, punk rock became a parody of itself and spun out of control and held on for way too long. And for me, I am much more concerned about reinvention than I am about making money. I tried that. I tried to do everything the system wanted. I bought in. I'm like Cool Hand Luke. Do you know that scene where Cool Hand Luke eventually gets broken?
Yeah.
But then he finally has a moment. Well, that's where I'm at. I've just stole the truck at the end of the movie. But part of like truly embracing being a clown is me embracing that, like, I will always push against the system and I can't worry as long as my bills are paid and that I'm not borrowing money from my much more successful girlfriend, that what's more important to me is that I am aware of how it needs to change and I'm with that change the whole time. And I think when we talked about inefficiency, I think at the beginning of this podcast, when corporate interests come in and we start to streamline any process, it just like loses all of its gas. There were a lot of good stand-up specials that came out. I thought Rory's was great.
Rory's is great, yeah.
I mean, really, what's his name? Nate Bargatze's.
Great, love Nate.
Like, there's a bunch of like really good ones.
Yeah.
But now when you look at the quality control in general, there's just a lot of mid ones, and I'm not even bad. There are some bad ones, but like in general, you're like, this is what a special is now, and I'm gonna come up, and this is what an hour looks like for me, in a way that like does not help stand up as an art, but it is making it more profitable. That this kind of can exist. What's going to happen eventually is the wheels come off. It's just like right now we're there. Yeah. Right now there's so many specials coming out and they don't feel special at all. They shouldn't even be called specials.
Well, there's no gatekeepers.
Yeah.
So when you have a system with no gatekeepers, there's nothing quality controlling.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a point where people want certain gatekeepers back to make sure that there's a quality control. The ones that are like, artist friendly or curating. Because like we're either going to rely on the algorithm curating for us, which I started listening to like radio again because I want like a human to curate.
Yeah.
Like I don't want algorithmic content anymore.
No. And I think algorithm content is just showing us what big bags of shit we all are in general. I laugh so much because I'm so bad at social media. But part of
You're getting better. Those stuff when the spinny cam with you and Rory laughing and stuff, those were great.
Because I'm working with people who know what they're doing. But like the thing about social media that's so funny to me is like, I would love when I see like my buddy Morgan Jay, I'm just saying like he's so good at it.
So good.
So good. And he's like such a sweetheart, but he just gets it. He's good with technology. It's like, would I love to have some reels or TikToks that did Morgan J business? Sure. But at the same time, there's a TikTok out there of just like a grilled cheese sandwich being made that's got the same numbers. Like we're competing with a grilled cheese sandwich.
Yeah.
We're competing with, someone who's just like running into a pole. And so it's like, well,
that's okay.
I was like, it's just the meritocracy. But it also shows us like, we just want to feel anything. And if we just trust the algorithm is really based on just visceral feeling. It's not based on taste making, quality control. And like it's nice when you have people who are trying to elevate what they're giving an audience. I like that.
Right. Well, it's like kind of like it's in a way it's like Apple. It's like, here's this great thing. Mm-hmm. It's better than what you think it should be. And it's better for a reason, like the iPhone.
Yeah.
And they're like creating things that like are better. And they don't always like make the right choices, like these gatekeepers. But if you have someone who's putting a stake in the ground and saying, this is the art that we stand for, and you can like it or not, but I'm curating this.
It's interesting as we talk about this, though, I realize because clown, when it's done right, it's just moving at the speed of life. Like it's literally changing. The clown that I'm doing now compared to just 3 years ago, compared to 6 years ago, compared to 9, it has changed so dramatically. One, it's now including so many more voices and people. We're dealing with like what our responsibility is to the world in presenting this. Are we an escape from all that stuff? Are we a way to examine the abuse and corruption of power? Like, it's like these questions are constantly in play. And the problem with gatekeepers often is it's very hard to find a gatekeeper who's keeping up with how the world's changing.
Everyone who's really successful that I see right now has successfully built their own audience.
Yeah.
who missed like the last vestiges of the old system, which were like you went through the traditional media. But anyone who's not doing that, like if you're funny today, what are you doing? You're picking up your phone and you're making your own audience.
Yeah.
And then you figure out how to get into the clubs and the tour after. Because we've seen, they will open their arms to you if you have an audience and be like, come.
But what does it even mean that they open their arms? I have a bunch of YouTube content providers that I know that are doing great, millions and millions of subscribers. Some of them are staying true to their vision. They're like, this is how I got here. But I heard a story the other day about a bunch of them just like almost melting down, trying to figure out how to create sponsored content for like Doritos. Like that's one of the funny things too, is you spend all this time curating your own voice and building your own audience. And then the minute someone comes in with money and they're like, we need you to do everything different, we still can't help ourselves. I look back, I was always a rebel. I was always, my whole life, I mean, even going into wrestling, it was like, I'm going to run away with the circus. And the minute I sold a script, I was so ready.
Fruit Ninja.
Yeah. So I was so ready to play ball. It's like because that comfort and security, it's just, we crave it. We can't help it. That's
we want
just
the approval too.
We want the approval. We want someone to tell us we're doing it right. And if there's anything that I'm proud of at this very late stage of the game for me, is like, I do not care anymore. I'm not saying that once in a while I'm not walking my dog and being like, you quit, you piece of shit. Like I know that voice is just like an old echo.
Yeah.
But right now, with any show I make, any bit I make, anything I do at a club, 100% it's for me. And I'm going to build my audience based on creating work and trying to connect with people through my uncompromised vision for who I am as an artist.
Yeah.
And I've never been here before. And it feels great. It's fucking terrifying.
You look happy.
I'm having a great time. And I'm like, I can't believe my life sometimes that I get to just make these shows.
Yeah.
I'm really lucky to sell classes.
Yeah.
That pays, I'm lucky to be someone who people want to learn from. 6 months, maybe that's not true anymore. I don't know. But I'm just living in the moment of it.
But you're if you're like, I'm a stand-up, want to learn clown, you're kind of like the first stop.
Right now, it does seem like, because also I'm between both worlds.
Right.
And there's only a few of us. There's Christina Catherine Martinez, Natalie Palomides, Courtney Peroso.
But they don't teach.
They don't teach.
Right.
So I'm the only one who's also like degrading themselves by teaching.
But like, is there like can this be captured with media? Like, can what you did with Rory, which is a little, has definitely clown elements.
Oh, for sure.
Can that be captured on film in a way that like is as visceral as the live experience? We
have tried. We haven't quite figured it out. We made something a few years back called Two Pink Doors for FX's Cake. I was really proud of that. That's on Hulu. And it's clown in sort of a sketch format. We'd actually made some longer form stuff for them, but then the pandemic happened, and there's two really fun, like 12-minute clown shorts that we made for FX that are just sitting, getting dust somewhere. I was part of a show that Natalie and Courtney made called The Broadcast that just had a kind of a premiere at South by. But it doesn't have a buyer yet. So that show is done. We keep finding ways to be absurd, but we are bumping up against the industry wanting us to be a little more to center, and us understanding that if we get too close to center, then we're completely undistinguishable. I think one of my favorite clown shows, there's some out there. I think You Should Leave. I mean, that sort of level of emotional commitment and absurdity, I'm like, that's something that's close to what we're chasing here. There's a show called Taskmaster. Have you ever heard of it? It's had a huge run overseas, and eventually it's kind of like they give people tasks. Mae Martin was on it.
Okay.
Partly why they're so popular. This is a straight up clown show. Just people being like, a prompt might be create the most interesting noise, and then you see them trying to figure out this problem. So you do see people peek out and find it for a second in a flash, but no one's cracked it yet for sure.
I mean, we just shot Courtney Peruso's special at the Elysian.
I was there.
So I think that's one that feels like I'm really hopeful that it's captured on film in a way that's like has the essence of it.
Yeah, and I think that has a nice construction to it, and there's jokes. There's like straight up It's not just about the experiential thing that clown can be.
Right.
Every time.
There's bits.
Latif, every time I'll do like these improvised clown sets at this other show called Catsby. And I'm in the room and like we are crushing. And then somebody will post like 30 seconds. And I'm like, if I saw this, I would never go to that show. This looks untenable. Like this looks like embarrassing.
Is it because it's shot bad or just it's not funny?
It's because part of what we're doing is we're creating like a living energy in the room, right? Like we're slowly but surely breaking the composition of the audience and getting them to agree to more foolish and more foolish things. We're lowering the bar by working so hard at a dumb idea. And then you just see out of context a moment of that process.
Yeah, it'd be like seeing two of the comedians on stage at the Elysian doing something silly for 10 seconds. It's like, wait, what is this?
Right. And like all we can hope for in those moments isn't like the big laugh, but that maybe the stage picture is good and that it's sort of evocative. I'll say this, like, I don't know, are you married?
Yeah.
So I bet if we saw footage of one of the best dates you had with your wife before you got married, and you're like, this was the night we both knew, and we saw 15 seconds of that night, we'd be like, these people shouldn't be together. Like, there's a magic that's going on.
Yeah.
There's this sort of exchange of energy that we're not capturing. And so with clown...
It's at the point when you're like, no, I said, well done.
Yeah, exactly. What an asshole. Yeah, you just discard a waiter.
Yeah.
But it's just like, there are just moments in clown that are so dependent on the live relationship with the audience. And we're trying. I think a lot of it is finding like the simplicity and the beauty and the absurd and like the a really good acting between the players. I think you can get a little taste of it. If Rory and Chad Win Comedy Tonight was ever like a TV show, which is not something we're pursuing, it would really be trying to figure out how we convey to the audience at home that we are taking an entire audience on a journey every show. And like, can we translate to an audience like that they're invested in what the audience is going through in the show? Because right now an audience just sits as support, right? Like you have a sitcom taping. The audience is there just to laugh and tell us when things are funny. And for that show to translate, it would have to be that the audience is excited to watch the audience have a unique experience. How do you shoot that? I don't know.
I like, Chappelle's show had a really cool format because they had the audience, and when Chappelle came out and you talked to them right away, it felt like there's a strong connection.
Intimate, yeah.
He's intimate, he's connecting, and it's like an audience, and then we're here to do this thing together. And then they went into all the sketches.
Right. No, I thought that was really smart, and also really highlighted that he is a performer with a deep connection.
Yeah.
The audience really feels like he's just talking to them.
And if we deconstruct your show, like you're there and that you have that moment as well. Well, like you get on stage, you connect with the audience. But now after that moment, how does the rest of the show get captured?
Yeah.
That's like, and it can be broken. It can't, like, there's something in
someone
there.
will figure it out. I do feel like social media, the one good thing about social media is there are a lot of people who have figured out how to capture moments of clown.
Yeah.
Like these bursts of clown. And like, it's sort of this thing we do called entrances and exits. It's like one of the fundamental drills.
That's why we built the curtain.
Yeah. You need to be able to take advantage of the moment they see you and the moment they see you disappear. And I think social media is natural entrances and exits.
Yeah. Where did you learn all this?
My journey was unconventional in the sense that I worked in wrestling, which very fundamentally fuels my work. Did not realize it would later. And then when I came out here to be a writer, I went through an entire improv journey, UCB, IO West, all that stuff.
Can I ask a wrestling question before you go down there?
Of course, yeah.
Is the wrestling like, because it's loosely scripted, but it could go horribly wrong, right? Like, it's because there's so many elements. They're jumping, they're fighting, there's a kind of a script, there's the players, but it feels very clownish where it could work, it could not.
You also, with wrestling, you have to understand too that there's like the televised product, and then there's matches without TV. There's old school thinking and new school thinking.
Okay.
When I started, which was mid-90s, and I was working there, the wrestlers had much less restriction. It really was more like pure clown in the sense that you'd get two very capable people in the ring, and they knew what the finish was. They'd probably discussed a few moments in the storytelling of like, oh, I'm going to work on your arm.
Yeah.
Or you keep looking out at my valet who you used to be in love with. That's part of the story. But then they would call it in the ring. That's the way we would term it. And they would feel the crowd, and almost always the heel calls the match. The heel is trying to figure out the best way to get the audience angry at them and cheering the babyface.
And who's like a famous heel? Like,
Ric Flair.
okay.
Ric Flair would probably be the most famous. Roddy Piper for most of his career was a heel. Right now, Roman Reigns is the biggest wrestler in the world.
Is The Rock a heel?
Right now he is, but sometimes sometimes you switch.
Okay.
So there was a chunk of time where Rock was a great heel, and he's a heel right now, heading into WrestleMania.
Okay.
So the reason the heel calls it is because he's trying to maximize the tension. He's trying to find ways to, like, the heel might decide in the match that, like, oh, I need to beat on you for 15 minutes for your comeback because I need the audience so desperate to cheer for you. Or the heel might read, they're in love with, they're going to give it up. I'm going to bounce around for you the whole match. As wrestling has become more televised and the stakes have become higher, now matches are much more scripted. There are wrestlers who come up with almost the entire outline of the match, pretty much move for move.
Like even marks, like I'm going to stand here, you're going to stand there. Like
they have a really good sense of it, and they have the hard camera, and they like, but essentially, they script the whole match. That's new. That didn't exist back in the old days. Literally, guys would do 60-minute Broadways, and what that means is a 60-minute draw, and they would not have talked about the match at all. They had worked together before. They might go into a sequence they had done before, but wrestling now is definitely more about telling a specific story, and it is a testament to these performers that they are able to remember like very complicated sequences. They also do have the benefit that there's things called house shows or dark shows where they can work on matches, like doing small matches in towns on the way to a big televised event. They can kind of run through what a match might look like. And for every Raw and SmackDown, there's 4 or 5 full shows in between with no cameras. But also there's the scripting of interviews or promos. And the really good performers, like The Rock right now, he has a guy named Brian Gerwitz, and he writes a lot of The Rock stuff, but The Rock is also a great improviser and something
has great timing.
Great timing. I mean, really, I will say to you that there was no surprise amongst my friends who are wrestling fans when he became a huge movie star, because we were watching him essentially go out week after week and just kind of put a 20-minute segment together in front of a live audience that was electrifying, to use his word. And so we were like, yeah, this guy's a movie star. This guy's great. Sometimes it doesn't, like Hulk Hogan's also good at that, but on camera, like in a movie, he's unwatchable. It's embarrassing.
Well, I think he dressed too often like Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
like The Rock, like they would put on new clothes.
Yeah.
Like Hulk Hogan.
And The Rock's kind of cool and handsome, and Hogan always had that bald head with the long, stringy baby blonde hair. But yeah, like, so for me, what I took from wrestling in terms of clown was, as an announcer, and I did not see how funny it was, my job was to treat everything like it was the best thing. There's a quote I use sometimes. There's a famous announcer named Jim Ross, and there was a match in WrestleMania between Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit being the murderer, but at the time was still in favor with the general public. And they're in this match, and this is like the kind of comedy that comes from announcing. Jim Ross goes, Eddie Guerrero's, I'll do it in his voice. He goes, Eddie Guerrero's cardio is unparalleled, and so is Chris Benoit's. I just think that's the funniest thing. So you have two people with unparalleled cardio. Like only one can be unparalleled. But like, that's what you do the whole time. You're like, this is the most amazing thing. I can't believe I saw this. The second something new comes in, like a clown, you're like, this is the moment I've been waiting for all night. You just swore up and down that this was the moment that shook you to your core, and literally now you're on something else. So treating everything with value, even stuff that's clearly dumb, that was important. And in general, patience. You watch these really good storytellers in the ring. Moves happen and suddenly they stop. They look at the audience. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe he's getting up from that. I tried to pin him. Or like, wow, we're so evenly matched that the speed of performance isn't how we move through life. We actually can take so much space to just be in our feelings and react and acknowledge reaction. And these are things that have been really benefited me all through my clown stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like you and Rory is a wrestling match without the fighting.
Right. And we do talk kind of about like, what is our dynamic?
Hear me out.
Yeah.
No, I'm just
Yeah. We're going to put a promomotion together.
Yeah. Because you guys take a long pause, like you pause and like you're very good at like there's so much active listening.
Yeah.
For two people who are very quick with their, quips and their retorts, like.
Yeah. And it was refreshing because a lot of times, like I'll work with someone who's really smart, like Rory, but they're also moving too fast.
Yeah.
Their brain is moving too fast.
And you're stepping on each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my thing is I'm always going to go quiet, and I'm always going to let that person gas out. Not like to make them embarrass them, just to keep the timing of it. But with him, I never have to do that.
Right.
I also know if he sees me taking a moment and not speaking, he doesn't feel like he has to fill space.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that happens so often.
That must be one of the hardest parts working with stand-ups, who always generally need to fill dead space.
But that's why I take all their words away. I don't let them speak. Like I literally tell them, unless I ask you a specific question, never speak. And you can feel the tension because I'll let silence sit. Were you at the show that John Daly and Brooks Wheelan did?
No.
Oh, it's one of the best shows. They went up and they've been both drinking beers before the show. And I kept saying to them, I'm like, you guys, you're going into this with with a smile. You're going into this with the wrong attitude. I was like, you're just going to have to behave. And you could just see they're like, fuck this guy. I've been on stage. Both of them have been on huge stages, crushed thousands of times collectively. And they walked out and I started roasting them and they started talking back. And I was like, you're not allowed to talk back. And they're like, we're allowed to do whatever we want. And they start kind of battling me. Right. So now I've never had this happen before. Two very fast guys. So I'm going to lose. Yeah. Also, I'm low and they're high.
Yeah.
So I've given them the advantage and I just let them both kind of go at me for a little bit. And I just go quiet. And I go to the audience, is this what you all want? Is this the show you came to see? And then they just start booing Brooks and John. And then they kind of go, fuck you. And then they boo them twice as hard. And it's on camera somewhere in my files. They both were like, oh, wait. Which, like, because they're not, stand-up's not used to that.
Not used to being booed for being funny.
Yeah. And also, not when a stand-up usually kind of comes back, they're not used to collectively the whole, like, they're battling one person.
Yeah.
Or, like, they're not battling the audience. You can't battle the whole room.
No, you'll lose.
You lose. And so in this moment, you could see like the little boys who were just like, no, we just wanted you to laugh and love us.
Yeah.
And it was such a fun moment. And to their credit, later in the show, they just kind of were like, all right, we got to take a different tack. And they did win the audience over. But yeah, it's this idea of just like, you just feel this need to control everything. But what you don't realize is the audience feels just as out of control. And if you're willing to be patient, wait them out, they're begging you to put them back on track. They don't want chaos. Once in a while, you have to kick an idiot out.
Yeah.
Like once in a while, there's a guy who's just, almost always a man, who's just like, oh, I'm having fun. And like, okay, we can't fix you. We can't fix you in your life. But,
Have you thrown someone out before?
I haven't at a stand-up and clown. I actually threw out a guy at the Lyric Hyperion once at a clown show who was like talking the whole show. And I got to tell you, I did not do it in a great way. I was kind of playing like a bruiser in the show.
Yeah.
And I was watching him ruin set after set and my set was coming up. And I walked out. And again, I'm not proud of this. I just walked out, grabbed him by the lapels, lifted him out of his seat and carried him out the front and put him out the front. Didn't say, come with me. The crowd went crazy. I was so mad, right? Because I love these clowns. Like these are my friends. Like when I see.
Oh, you took a clown out?
Well, the story that's so funny. This is my roommate now.
Oh my God.
And let me tell you. So I carried him out and I put him outside. And now
and you're like, how do you feel about $1,500 a month?
Yeah, well, exactly. I put him down, right? And we knew each other.
Yeah.
We had worked together before. And now we're face to face, and I've just literally ragdolled him out of the room. And he looks at me and goes, thank you. He goes, I didn't know how to get out of there. I was like, okay, it's okay. And then the owner of the lyric at the time started yelling at him. I'm like, no. I was like, it's fine. It's like, this is just someone who had too much to drink. But yeah, I was like, because that was one of the reasons I was so mad, because I was like, you know better. And so yeah, I just monkeyed him out of there. And when he said thank you, it was one of the most shocking moments. He's like, and he was so like, he just put his hand on my shoulder. He goes, yeah, I just drank too much before the show. I didn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But I've never had to do it. I've had a couple people talk out in stand up and clown. What I usually do is I just put the flashlight on them.
Oh yeah. The flashlight is such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
It's such a great prop.
Yeah. And just to put it on them and then just sit there and be like, let's go. And if they're really bad, I'll just be like, let me just check before we go any further. And I'll look at the audience and be like, is this your advocate? Is this the person you all want to speak? Because only one of you can speak for all of you. Is this the one? And usually they're like, no. And that almost like at that point, if the person would continue to talk, I would just get them out of there.
So megaphones, flashlights, fanny packs, the
tear gas,
the Chad story. Tear gas. I didn't hear the tear gas story. Just coming here with canisters.
Yeah, canisters. Yeah.
Well, Chad, thank you so much for doing the pod.
Oh my God, it's just so fun. I appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah, it was really great to learn more about your history, and let's do it again and like plug your shows, tell everyone what's definitely the stand-up and clown. Definitely Chad and Rory Save Comedy again and again.
Yeah. And classes, you can go, I have a link tree under my name, chad.damiani. So just go to my link tree. And also I do Stamptown, which happens at the Bourbon Room.
Nice.
So I'm in a bunch of shows and
don't sleep on the classes because they sell out pretty immediately.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you are someone who's just has an interest in seeing like what's on the other side of failure.
Yeah.
Definitely come. And you don't have to be an experienced performer. You don't have to have any performance experience. I love having a couple total normies in the class that just like, I like this work. I'm curious what it feels like. They actually usually raise the bar because all of us who think we know what we're doing.
Yeah, like, what is this? Yeah, we come in way more jaded.
Way more jaded.
The curiosity is beneficial.
Curiosity is joy. Unless it's conspiracy theories.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, buddy.
We'll see you.